Welcome back to another episode of The College. I'm your host, Jordan, and today I'm going to be talking with
Ella Harel. Enjoy the episode.
I just thought it'd be cool to start by if you just tell me your name and then we could go from there. Tell me your name and what year you are.
Yeah, I am Ella Harel Kirschner. I am a sophomore at the Annapolis campus. So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, sophomore year, so that means you've had most of your time here online, but we won't get there yet. Rather, why don't we just start, where are you from and what kind of brought you here?
Sure. So I am from Ballackinwood, which is a small town just outside of Philadelphia. It's kind of funny because if I drive 5 minutes one direction, it's like properly in the city of Philadelphia. But then if I drive 5 minutes the other way, it's like a very standard suburb. So I think it's a pretty cool place to live for that reason. And well, what brought me to St. John's? So I went to a kind of weird high school. It was this high school, I guess, for people who weren't having a ton of it didn't like feel like they were getting a lot out of their typical high school, like public high school experience. And so all of us, we went to that school, and they offered a lot of unconventional courses. So in addition to just like standard, like AP classes or whatever, it was basically a school for nerds, is the best way I can put it. But in addition to those classes, they also had some that you sort of wouldn't find, I guess, at a more traditional public school. And one of them that was really influential for me was this course called Socratic Seminar that was taught by this really wonderful teacher I had, Mr. Park, in high school. And I didn't know this, but he actually even knew about the St. John's program. And the way that the Socratic Seminar worked was actually quite similar to how our seminar works, which was we had, this incredible selection of different sources. I guess you could say like from the Western canon, that students from, anywhere from the freshmen to the seniors would get together and we'd read them before class. And then we'd have, now it seems like a short amount of time because our seminars are 2 hours, but we'd have 1 hour long discussions on those sources. And I always enjoyed that class a lot. It seemed really different from the kind of like rote memorization, I guess, that was very common in like the AP classes and stuff like that, like AP bio or like AP push or something like that. That just felt very rote to me a lot of the time. And I really enjoyed the sort of sincere intellectual freedom, I guess, that we had in our Socratic discussions. But I definitely think that at my high school, there was a very sort of strong push towards like competition and sort of pushing towards like the more like traditional elite kind of schools like Ivies and stuff like that. So for a while, I had it in my head, maybe that was the kind of place I wanted to go just because I'm a lemming, I guess. But it actually was the case that my dad went to St. John's for his undergrad. And he was always like, Ella, you should think about going to St. John's. You should think about going to St. John's. And I guess because I was like an edgy teen, I was like, I'm not going to do what my dad does. I had always kind of dismissed the idea somewhat. But then as it got closer to the time to actually begin applying to college, I began thinking a little bit more seriously about it. And then in the end, I did wind up applying, and they had their admitted students day. And I remember just being so captivated by the classes that I was sitting on, especially because they reminded me of what I did in Socratic Seminar. And then the thing that really cinched the deal for me was, I remember this was before COVID, so we could do things like sing together, but they had all the admitted students stand on the lower floor of the Great Hall. And then all the current students were standing at the top, and they like sang Secret Chervus to us. And I thought it was just like the most beautiful thing I'd ever heard. I guess I was really drawn to that as well. So yeah, in the end, I wound up at the college, and I love it a bunch. So yeah, that was super long-winded, but I'm on St. John's.
No, I think that's amazing. I'm always interested in hearing what like brought people. Myself, like it was I went to my college counselors and I was like, I'm really interested in like a smaller, like to middle-sized school. I'm looking at like, possibly liberal arts, but also want to like maybe dabble around with, I don't know, like a traditional computer science or engineering or whatever, right? Or philosophy, I don't know, whatever. And so they gave me this book, and then I was like really interested in Reed College, and that's on the West Coast, and our Santa Fe campus is also on the West Coast. So they were like close in like proximity to one another, like page wise. So then I like found St. John's. I was like, oh snap, this sounds really cool. Started looking at it, and then like you, I just kind of fell in love with the college. But I also want to talk about, and I don't know if this is something that you share, but I found that the things that the college says that we do, and things that like the authors and everything, and like taking up a challenge of like even working through Euclid isn't intense. Um, and I think my idea towards that was much different than I think it actually turned out to be. Because for me, and maybe it's a little bias I have because I've been reading Miss Hitz's book on like the intellectual life. I found that the act of doing a proof is much less about the, I mean, for some proofs, I could say it's definitely about the thing that you're proving, but in other cases, it's actually the steps in which you make come to the conclusion that you're trying to draw towards. And so, like, what I'm trying to say is, okay, I have this idea in my head, and then I'm sitting in class, and sometimes I'm like, this isn't what I imagined it to be. Not for better, not for worse, but it isn't exactly what I thought. Do you share any of those feelings, or how did you?
Or, sorry, which kinds of feelings? Could you just clarify a little bit?
Oh yeah, like the feelings of like, oh, what I thought this experience would be is kind of a little bit different.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question. I mean, I think that one thing I will say to sort of the question of intensity was that I did anticipate that the work we were going to do would be very difficult. But I think in some ways it was more difficult than I anticipated, or maybe difficult isn't exactly the right word. But what I've come to realize is that you really get out as much as you put in with what we do for all the program texts. And I've noticed that there's, for all the classes, for seminar and tutorials, you can sort of, there's like, there's different levels of inquiry and understanding you can reach just depending, at least for me, on like how much preparation I'm willing to put in. So for example, with the mathematics tutorial, right, there's this sort of preliminary, more cursory level where like you can go through the steps of the proof, and maybe if you're called on to demonstrate it, you can go through those steps. And that's like good enough. That's passable. And you're not going to stick out as like being super unprepared if you do that. So that's all well and good. But I've noticed that there's this kind of deeper level that you can get to where if you're really willing to put in, for me, it takes a super long time because mathematics has never come super easily to me. Like if I'm willing to just like sit sometimes for hours and hours and like really think about at that deeper level, what's going on, that's when it becomes really really interesting. Like they're kind of interesting, I just can't stop thinking about it and can't stop wondering about it. And when I feel like the learning that I'm doing is really productive. So yeah, I really think that the amount of satisfaction and learning that you get, it really just, yeah, it depends on how hard you're willing to work
Mhm.
and how seriously you take the material.
Yeah,
um,
and I also found there's a bit of humility one must have while entering our type of classroom situation, because you're really like, eh, I wouldn't say vulnerable, but you're putting yourself out there as like, okay, I don't know what this is, but I'm going to try to explain it to the best of my ability. And I might not hit the mark, but by expressing my thoughts, like we are advancing as a whole. And I always kind of use it's like this little phrase I heard, I forget from who, but it was like, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, like go together. So I always feel like, okay, that is always in my mind when I think of these things. Okay, yes, this, like I may understand Prop 147, but if someone's struggling to understand that like how we get there, like okay, let's take a second, let's ask these like important questions to ask, and then we can all achieve the same kind of understanding, which will better us, usually for what's to come, like Apollonius or even some other fun mathematicians.
Yeah, I mean the humility thing is frankly something I'm still sort of sorting through for myself, because I think that especially in high school, I kind of got this perverse satisfaction out of like always having the answer, you know, like getting all the questions on my test right. Like I was one of like those sorts of people, I guess. But that kind of approach, it just doesn't work at the college. And yeah, I found that it's just like impossible to learn. Like I
Mhm.
feel really impossible to learn. I'm like, I guess you could just say prideful in that way. So you really do have to humble yourself. And the thing that I've found is really helpful to remind myself is that all the texts that we're reading them because they've sustained inquiry and questioning and discussion for hundreds of years, sometimes even longer. And so if I were to show up having just like done like reading through it like, you know, once or twice, taking some notes, and then I have all the answers, like something would be wrong with me.
Mhm.
That's really a helpful attitude, I think.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely right. Like, I think that's a very exactly what you said, like reminding yourself, well, geez, like these things have been argued about or even talked about for hundreds, if not thousands of years. Well, one, which I have a question about, like, I'm not going to add anything, but two, it's like, oh, I can't possibly know everything. And I think one, saying like, I can't possibly know everything is kind of helpful in a way, because I don't think the purpose of a seminar or a tutorial is to understand something to its entirety, but rather it's like to strike some, I don't know, some sort of questioning, some sort of little like eternal flame within inside you saying, I want to like, I want to understand. And maybe the understanding is for you, like, I don't know. For me, like what I'm thinking is like, okay, however, what St. John's is trying to do it is allow you or prepare you in such a way in which you're given the fundamentals of okay, this is how I read a book, this is how I talk about it, this is how I investigate it to find a better understanding, not for any real reason, but to have like a more fruitful life. And then it's like, okay, that's it. That's it. You get that at 4 years, and then they set you out, and then you have the rest of your life to one. If you want to talk about these books, if you want to explore them, do so. But also, hopefully, within 4 years, you do a little bit of transformation within yourself, and you could say, okay, you know what? Um, I thought I valued having a brand new car or like the nicest car, but actually, what I just really want is something that is one, at the right price, but two, will last me and hopefully like my family years, right? I did ramble, so I apologize. But yeah, I don't know. Could you, looking at yourself now as a sophomore from your freshman self, have you seen any growth? Have you seen, I mean, of course, I bet you have, but like what kind of growth? What kind of struggles have you gone through? And like whatever you're comfortable with, you don't have to like
Yeah.
share anything that's too personal, but like I feel like you can walk up to anyone at St. John's and you could ask, but yeah, for you, like have you, how is that?
Yeah. Um, So the first thing that comes to mind for me is that I think that one criticism that's sometimes leveraged at, you know, what we do at the college is like, oh, you're just sort of sitting around and thinking like there's no practical experience. Like you should get a degree in something like, I don't know, like accounting or computer programming or something like that. And it's like, you know, maybe there's something to that criticism. But from my personal experience, I found that all of the work that I've done with the program so far has related very much to sort of my practical life, like just, you know, my day-to-day being, my friends, my family, you know, work, things like that. And I'll give an example. So one reading that is on the list for the freshman seminar is Aristotle's Ethics. And in the Ethics, there's a lengthy discussion of friendship. And I think that, you know, everybody likes to have friends and, you know, people like to go out and do things together, whatever. That's like a pretty standard thing, I guess, for human beings. Um, but when I read that source, it caused me to very seriously consider, in a way that I hadn't ever before, the people that I had around me that I considered my friends, and the sort of deeper reasons why I was associating with them, the effect that they were having on my soul, the effect that was having on their souls, things like that. Um, and I thought that was, yeah, so not only philosophically interesting, a question like what is friendship, But of course, it has immediate bearing on our lives. And I found that thinking it through was really helpful to me in appreciating the people that I had around me, or maybe wondering about some of the relationships that I had. So that's just kind of a case example of something that happens all the time, for me at least, as I'm going through the program, which is that there will be something that at least at a first pass might seem more abstract, but turns out to yeah, have a lot of practical bearing on my life. So that's one. Yeah, I think that's what I'll say for now.
Yeah, no, that's I myself am trying to find that, like, some things I'd say. I think seminar really like directly hits at what it means really to like I know this sounds like superficial or whatever, but like what it means to be human. And I think that's like it's an important question to ask. And it's something worth thinking about because like not only does it affect you, but it affects me, it affects the person down the street, it affects everyone around us. And like if you don't seriously think about these questions or at least ever consider them, I feel like you're doing yourself a disservice because I don't know, 20 years, 30 years down the line, you're just gonna ask yourself, well, why have I been spending all my time doing X, Y, and Z and never giving thought of why I'm doing it or what kind of effect it has on me? And am I truly doing something that makes me like fulfilled or I like happy is a strong word because it's like, well, what does that mean? But fulfilled in its own way is like, well, if I could do it all over again, I mean, maybe that's not the right way of putting it, but at least like the thought of, well, if I could do it all over again, would I do the same things or would I change it? And I think that says something. And giving thought to things like that is very important. And the books, especially, I mean, all through all 4 years from the Socratics to the Romans to the Enlightenment to medieval times, like everything really kind of revolves around that kind of humanity, I'd say. Um, I'm just struck it because I think that's something important, and I think there's something to be said about that. And I don't know if you agree or what, but I don't. I'm trying to get at like the importance of actually sitting down because I can imagine there are people out there. I mean, of course there are people out there. Some of them, some of those types of people are in my family telling me, well, "Why are you doing this?" This is like there's no value in it, and I never know how to respond. Um, but I do think this type of education where you don't have to read anything quote unquote great, but just kind of finding some sort of community where you do read something together and you can find some sort of truth within that, um, or like within yourself through the text. I think that's a better way of putting it.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's right.
We're not living in you know normal times, so things are all over the place. Um, and I guess if you could share some of your experience from this past year, how has it been on you?
Oh
Uh, what
gosh.
does it look like for people that don't know? I mean, they probably do.
Mhm. Well, I should probably say that, yeah, the first question you asked, you sort of asked me about, sort of what drew me to St. John's. And there was one thing that I guess I left out, which was that I have never liked technology very much. Probably because I love just like thinking and quiet and reading and writing, those sorts of things so much. I've always just like loathed like, getting tons of notifications on my phone or like staring at a screen just in a very basic way. It gives me a headache. And one thing I didn't love so much about my high school was that there were a lot of online learning kinds of things, presentations, and like all these things. They were always online. And I never liked that because I always had thought of learning, I guess, in a really simple way. All you need is just a competent teacher and willing students and maybe a blackboard, some chalk, some paper, books, things like that. So pretty bare bones approach to it. And that's exactly what I found at the college. I remember being really struck when I went to that admitted students day. You come into the classrooms and there's just tables and chairs and blackboards, and then we sit at the blackboards with our books and like that's it. And I was super drawn to that because of my Luddite disposition. And I was just so happy my freshman year. I was just I had wonderful friends and I was learning so much in my classes and I loved my tutors. And so when we were sent home, I guess it was February last year, I think, maybe March. I don't quite remember because time feels so odd for the moment. But anyhow, that was really hard on me because we went from being perhaps the college in the nation with like the least technology to having the entire learning experience being online. And it was really hard. Like, I'm not gonna lie. I mean, I know it was hard for everybody, but one issue that I had in particular was just like this realizing that even if I didn't do anything on my computer except for go to my Zoom classes, there were some days where I would wind up, if I just did that, I'd be on my laptop for like, I think it was like 6 or 7 hours. And I remember when I was a little girl, I'd like go to my grandparents' house, and if I watched cartoons for like 45 minutes or an hour, like, stop, you're gonna fry your brain. And then here I was, just out of necessity, spending hours and hours on my laptop, and it was just giving me a huge headache. And that kind of just, it resulted in this problem where I was just having a lot of trouble just reading because my head felt this like oozy, mushy, buzzy feeling in it all the time. So that was really hard. I mean, one thing that was really helpful to me was I would start, I'd put on my mask and I started taking daily walks around my neighborhood in between my classes, which I found really useful. But beyond things like that, there was, especially because, in the beginning, even still now, we really can't go out very much, can't see your friends, that kind of thing. So there weren't any terrific ways to cope. And it just, bluntly, it sucked. And it still sucks, but that's just how life is.
Yeah, no, I agree. It is, um, it's not ideal. The college is probably going to look a little bit different, especially if we do something like hybrid classes where, half of us are in person, half of us are remote learning, and we have a TV in the classroom. Because all of a sudden, I mean, we're still disoriented from what we're used to. But I think and I agree that like taking walks, getting out, getting some sunshine always helps. But I think another thing is just for me personally, it was like reaching out to tutors and just sitting with them one on one. And I know like being on your computer and all these things, it's just I felt the same way. Like I don't want to be on my computer. I don't want to be on my phone. I just want to like isolate myself from technology for just a little bit because it's something I need. But taking at least 15, 20 minutes just to check in with your tutor, be like, hey, how are you doing? Because I know like, we're students and yes, we're paying for it, but you're still doing the same thing we are. And if this has an effect on me, I bet it has an effect on you. And so like reaching out to them and, having just a little discussion about whatever. Freshman year, if it's some Plato reading, because I think, all freshmen, they went through the whole first semester online. So they got to read the Republic and everything. And even sophomores, you guys, I mean, Augustine's Confessions is one of my favorite works from sophomore year, but that's just my prejudice. But yeah, reading those types of things and just being able to have a little short discussion is always helpful. And it honestly gave me a little bit more inspiration or motivation to like get back and actually doing something. Cause it's like, okay, yes, feel my feelings, like work through how I'm feeling, but also understand that we're in a very difficult time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think,
Yeah. I mean, oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, after you.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree, especially about the point with tutors, because I mean, especially, or yeah, even when we were in person, I always found that, the tutors were just the best word I can think of is inspirational presence, right? And one thing that I think of is that even the tutors that, have multiple doctorates, we all have the same honorific, we all go by Mr. and Mrs., but the difference is that, the tutors have gone through the program over and over and have more experience reading the texts. And, freshman year, and sophomore year too, I just had the most amazing tutors. And I would sometimes, I was just, I admired, I admired just how much serious thinking they had done about the text, just like so much. And sometimes if I was feeling really exhausted or a little down on my studies, because it happens. Yeah, just seeing them would be really encouraging to me. And I think that having that largely severed when we first moved online was definitely really difficult, especially because I don't know, for me, it's one thing if you, and this is also true of, setting up meetings with friends. So much of what happened when we were in person at the college was spontaneous. You'd run into somebody after class and you'd start talking about, tonight's seminar reading or something interesting you were doing in one of your classes. And it just happened in this very spontaneous way. But for me, whether it be setting up, a FaceTime call with one of my friends, or even more so, like a Zoom, take your tutor to coffee, there's this kind of awkward barrier to it where you have to write him like, dear Mr. So-and-so, like, I hope you're well. So that was definitely something I had to get over, but it still is awkward even after almost a year.
Yeah, no, thinking about it, I feel bad for you guys. Well, I feel bad for everyone. Seniors, they don't get to experience a normal uh, senior year. Juniors, we've spent a year and a half online, a year and a half in person. Sophomores, you spent most of your time online. And then freshmen, they have never stepped foot in a classroom. And if they have, it's because they're living in Annapolis. Um, so I completely understand that. But, and I think what I'm about to bring up, I think is helpful to not only for anyone listening, but I think also for I guess the younger classes at the college. Is like, okay, here are some of the things that we do not offer, but that we do. This is something that is, I wouldn't say instilled in the college, but it is something that the college is made up of. And that is, what do you enjoy doing around? Because I know there's a St. John's chorus. I know there's like fencing club. I know there's rowing. I know like that we have like a ton of different things that, like, at face value, I don't think people, or at least I didn't know St. John's offered. And I'm not saying this as like some sort of, uh, you know, selling point of the college, but I just think it's interesting about how much of the things, like extracurricular things, they are um, not tied to the books. And I mean that in the sense, like, we do read a lot, and reading is taxing in its own way. And a way to combat that is getting out and being active. Like you said, taking walks helped you, but also for some people, rowing or fencing or playing in the intramural teams, or even going out and like working out with a friend. So yeah, I'm not saying those are the things that you do, but I was just kind of curious, like, what do you enjoy?
Yeah. So it's funny because I miss the classes so much. Like I was saying, like I'm a huge Luddite, so I just miss like sitting around a table with people and doing classes that way. But I don't want to state this in a superlative way, but very nearly, I would say the thing that I miss the most, perhaps, is the St. John's chorus, which I guess for people who don't know, all freshmen are required to do a freshman chorus. But then there's an extra course anybody in the college community can do, the St. John's chorus, that Mr. Calcavage wonderfully directs, meets on Wednesday nights. And it was just my favorite activity because I hadn't really had any background experience with music prior to coming to college. And I mentioned earlier that experience that I had hearing Secret Cherub's sung for the first time. I mean, I never even heard polyphony before. And then when I came to the college, I just kind of jumped in. I didn't even know how to read music, couldn't really sing, like all that stuff, but I just jumped in and it became probably my favorite thing throughout the week. There was something that was just so cleansing and encouraging and beautiful about singing with the college community, especially because freshman course is compulsory, but the people who sing in the St. John's chorus are self-selected. So everybody's really excited to be there. And it just sounded so beautiful. And though there's some activities like study groups and things like that that can approximately be replicated online, you cannot sing in a chorus online. So yeah, I haven't done that in so long and I miss it a ton. But maybe one day, maybe what I'm hoping is by my senior year, maybe we can have chorus again.
Yeah, no, fingers crossed. We still have time to get there, but I want to like keep this like an open conversation. I know you have to go soon, but like, yeah, I think the reason I started this podcast is because I in some sort of like selfish way. I want to understand like who this community is made up of. And it's interesting to hear everyone's kind of different takes of their experience at St. John's. And that's something to be said within itself, but also it gives me a better idea of what this college really does. Um, because the college will talk, or if you are someone looking into the college as an incoming freshman or something like that, or even a transfer student, they talk about like these big points about, oh, we read the great books. Um, oh, what's some other thing? Like we play croquet and like we do all these fun things. Um, we don't have any exams or this or that, whatever. But I don't think those are the real selling points of St. John's. I think what's under or like kind of like missed when those things are represented is one, the power of like having like-minded people around. That was a very weird way of wording that, but like, you know, everyone at St. John's, I'd say, is similar in some sort of way. And that's just maybe they don't enjoy reading, but they do enjoy talking about things, or they really enjoy reading, or whatever it is. We all are brought together because we're on a pursuit of something, and that something is given the opportunity to how am I trying to say this? Like that's something that we're all chasing is set in such a close proximity that like people all over can meet with one another and then all of a sudden, you know, get a better idea of what that something is. But yeah, I really wonder, just like overall, how's your experience been? And like this is something, this is trying to, the purpose of this, I guess, is trying to give an accurate representation of the experiences of the students and allow anyone who's interested in it to hear.
I mean, I would say, yeah, if you want the finest and most numerous dining facilities of any university in the United States, maybe don't come to St. John's. And also the most modern and luxury dorms, maybe it's not the right choice for you. But I think if you're concerned with being given an opportunity to really think about interesting things in a way that has the potential, I mean, you'll see on the sort of marketing materials, I guess, of the college, they say things like this and they can sound like sort of lofty, hackneyed tropes, but I think it's true, like an opportunity to genuinely change your soul in some way, which I guess is what we were talking about earlier. I really do think the education that the program offers is a great one.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I'm not even halfway through the program and I already feel like I've profited greatly from it. And I think also, yeah, you were talking about this in your last point. Yeah, it's just amazing the simultaneous diversity and also unity of the student body. Like sort of like you were saying, the different interests that people have, you know, the ways that they spend their free time, whether it be, you know, like fencing, crew, or, you know, going to the art studio or singing the chorus. And some of the weird side hobbies people have, you know, like some people know Arabic, or some people like to write computer programs. Like it's just amazing, the different sort of, yeah, the diversity of interest and thought that's available at the college. And so that's on the one hand. I think something that's really cool is like, I felt like when I was on campus, I mean, every person that I met was just so unique and interesting. I'd never met someone that I thought was just like stale and boring. So that's really cool. Yeah, the sort of diversity of people on the one hand, but then also this kind of unity that I noticed within that. So like some of my best friends at the college were international students that grew up literally like on the opposite side of the planet that I did. And I remember one day I came out of class and I was just like, this is so cool, right? That there's, you know, one of my classmates who is just from this completely different culture, like other side of the world, grew up speaking a different language, and we're just having a conversation, you know, about something that we both found equally meaningful and interesting. I was just like, whoa, that's so cool. So yeah, that sort of thing of diversity, but also unity has been on my mind, especially because I think that unity, the sort of common pursuit of learning that we have, is really the only thing that sustained us throughout this terrible disaster that was, the COVID and move online, because I honestly had like a super bad attitude about it in the beginning. I was like, I'm not going to learn anything. This is a complete waste of my time. This is a complete waste of my tuition. Drop out of college. I hate my life, like very negative. But, I learned a lot this past semester. And yeah, I got a screen headache every day. And sometimes it was really awkward on Zoom. And sometimes my computer would glitch, like all these things. But I learned a lot. And I think that was only possible because despite all of the sort of threats to our learning, I think that on the whole, people wanted to continue. We had this unified purpose of continuing to learn and have good discussions, and it certainly went better than one ever could have hoped. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. No, that I like the way that you put that. Like we collectively as, a polity, I think and I believe that of course, if you need to take the semester off, you need to take the year off, do so. If you feel like it will not benefit you, do so. But I think for the people that decided to tackle the challenge of, and it is a challenge within itself, of being online, we all still felt some sort of sense of like purpose. We're like, okay, we're sitting here. This is not the environment we want to be in, but we still have an objective, and that objective is to understand or pursue or whatever, right? Like it's like, okay, we're here and we're not going to let these things stop us. And I really like the way that you put it, because I felt that in my own classes. It's tough and everyone knows it's tough, but we're not going to let that stop us. And I think that says something about the type of community that we are. It's like you can put anything between us, but what you won't stop is our ability to take things away, to learn. The pursuit of, I wouldn't say wisdom, but something, the pursuit of some sort of knowledge. Well, one, thank you.
Yeah, bye.
I'll see you.
That's all for this episode of the podcast. Stay tuned for more episodes coming soon.